Hi, I'm Brickroad. We're back in the inky void of nothingness, vaguely pointed in the direction of the Final Fantasy VIII world map, so that must mean it's time for another Final Fantasy Villainous addition to the table. And today we are looking at Ultimecia, the sorceress who is the final boss of Final Fantasy VIII. She's the sixth villain I've added to the table. I've also added these action symbol cards. These come packed in with the actual board game Villainous if you buy a hard copy. I thought it might be nice to have these little cheat sheets on the table to remind people what the item buttons actually do. And then on the flip side of each villain's action symbols card, you have an inventory of everything in their villain deck and fate deck, so you know how many copies of each card you can look forward to seeing. So I like to try to base Villainous decks around mechanics that are inherently in the game, and Ultimecia's deck is based around the mechanic of locked locations. If you look at the bottom right corner of each of the three locations, Estar, Balam Garden, and Orphanage by the Sea, you see the little lock icon. That means she begins play with all three of those locations locked down. And typically in Villainous, a villain will have one location locked that they have to open or unlock in order to pursue their win condition. The general idea is you cannot do anything in a locked location. You can't play cards there, you can't move items there, you can't vanquish heroes there. Usually there's only one locked location in a realm and you unlock it and that's it. But Ultimecia has three locked locations and she locks and unlocks them several times over the course of her game. So let's take a look at her villain guide here. Ultimecia's objective: begin your turn with 3 possessed sorceresses, each in a locked location. The story of Final Fantasy VIII is filled with sorceress characters that you meet, and then you find out later that they were all possessed in turn by an evil sorceress from the far future named Ultimecia. And her ultimate goal is called time compression. She wants to make all points in time condense down to one point where only she can exist. So to win the game, Ultimecia in Villainous has to unlock everything in her realm, put a sorceress on each of these 3 locations, possess the sorceress, and then lock them back up. However, the first thing you do on your turn in Villainous is move to another location, and since you always start in the furthest right location in your realm, in this case Ultimecia Castle, if she begins play with 3 locked locations, what does she do? Well, Ultimecia Castle has a special action symbol that only Ultimecia has, called Compressed Time. This is her play a card action, and it's her main way of playing more than one card. If she takes this action, she can play 1 card plus 1 card per locked location in her realm. So if you unlock all the locations too early, you lose the ability to play multiple cards per turn, because Ultimecia's realm is a little bit unique in that no single location has 2 play a card actions. In addition, if you start your turn and you can't move anywhere because everything else is locked, Ultimecia gains 2 power. This always happens on the first turn of the game. Ultimecia does follow all of the rules about locked locations except for one. In order to help her unlock locations and get cards there and take actions there, she's allowed to play ally cards and only ally cards to locked locations, and when she does, the location becomes unlocked. There's one major exception to this, and there's a couple of other fiddly things involved that we'll go through when we take a look at her deck. We also have 2 notes on this page that seem obvious but do need to be spelled out for the sake of Villainous. For one, you can't lock a locked location or unlock an unlocked location. That's because there are cards in the deck that say lock this location or unlock this location, and you're actually not allowed to play those cards if the location is already in that state. One of the Villainous rules is you cannot play a card unless you're able to do everything the card says. You can't play a card and ignore what it says just to get rid of the card. The other note is that no matter what happens, you can never lock Ultimecia Castle. If you did, the deck would literally become unplayable. In fact, version 1 of this deck didn't have that note, and they locked Ultimecia Castle, and that was it. The deck became unplayable, and we couldn't go forward. The way sorceresses work is sorceresses are allies in Ultimecia's deck. We'll see them when we go in there. You play them, and then they each have an activate ability to rotate them 45 degrees to indicate that they are possessed. And then just be on the lookout because there are fate cards that can depossess sorceresses or prevent Ultimecia from possessing them. Finally, Ultimecia has lots and lots of ways to lock and unlock locations in her realm, which we will get into as we go through her deck. So first we have our most powerful ally, Cypher, and Cypher does not unlock a location that he's played to, but he is allowed to still be played to locked locations. He can also move to locked locations, which other allies are unable to do. If you have a hero in your realm, and you lock the location they're in, and then Cypher moves to that location, you can defeat that hero without discarding Cypher. So Cypher's a pretty good way of taking care of heroes in your realm. Ultimecia has 6 sorceress cards. The first 3 are named. There is Adele, and Idea, and Rinoa. These 3 allies work exactly like the other sorceresses. They count as sorceresses. You possess them. They count towards Ultimecia's objective, but they have extra effects. Very notably, Idea does not have to be activated in order to be possessed. She's already possessed when she comes into play. On top of that, Ultimecia has 3 just generic sorceresses that don't do anything except become possessed. We also have a couple more generic allies. Here's an Iron Giant that doesn't do anything but has 4 strength. And then the Propagators. When a Propagator is defeated, you can search your villain deck to get the other Propagator out of the deck and place it in your hand. After that, we have a couple of effect cards here. Here's one, Apocalypse. Ultimecia can throw away her hand and gain 2 power for each ally discarded in this way. In actual practice, Propagators and Iron Giants tend to not help Ultimecia's win condition much, but if you have a hand full of them and play this Apocalypse, it's an easy way to get some power. And then we have this card, Triple. This is the only other way that Ultimecia is able to play 2 cards in a single turn without taking the compressed time action. This lets her play 2 extra cards, and each of those cards has their power cost reduced. We have these 2 cards here, Vividarium et Intervigilium et Viator. This is just another way to defeat heroes in locked locations in Ultimecia's realm. We have 2 of these cards, the Rosetta Stone. This card does exactly what the Rosetta Stone did in Final Fantasy VIII. It gives Ultimecia more actions. Because she has to unlock 3 locations, then play 3 cards, then activate 3 cards, then lock 3 locations, at the bare minimum, that's a lot of actions. So Rosetta Stone is in the deck to allow her to take more actions, get done the things she needs to get done in order to pursue her objective. We have this card here. This is the Elevator Hall. This is the only item Ultimecia has that can be activated while it's in a locked location, and it's there to toggle the lock status of that location. Pretty useful if you want to lock a location just to kill some heroes there and then unlock it later so you can play a sorceress there. Ultimecia has these 2 conditions, Lunar Cry. This enables her to play allies from her hand at no cost, and if that ally is a sorceress, she can be possessed immediately, thereby saving 1 action. She has these 2 conditions, Maybe I'm a Lion, and this allows her to lock a location down and defeat all heroes in that location. So again, you can see why having the generic allies with regular strength score isn't super helpful, because Ultimecia has lots of ways to get rid of heroes. Finally, we have 7 cards called Phthos, Lusek, Vekos, Vinosek, and these give Ultimecia lots of ways to lock or unlock locations. Each of these 7 cards does something a little different. So the first 3 cards, this one and this one and this one, can lock or unlock locations based on Ultimecia's position or the position of a possessed sorceress in her realm, and each card gives her the option between one of 2 effects. The next 3 work kind of the same way, but for specified location. Each one of these gives you the option to lock or unlock one specific location. And finally, we have probably the most powerful card in Ultimecia's deck. The 7th Phthos Lusek card allows her to spend power to lock or unlock any number of locations. It's pretty popular for an Ultimecia player to keep this card in their hand until the end when they've got 3 possessed sorceresses, then pay the 6 or 9 power to lock everything down at once. So that's a lot of jargon about locked locations. What do the heroes have to say about all this? Well, to begin with, we have 3 heroes that kind of do the same thing: Squall and Laguna and Headmaster Sid. Each of these 3 characters is paired with one of the 3 named sorceresses: Squall to Rinoa, Laguna to Adele, and Headmaster Sid to Idea. And if those sorceresses are possessed, bringing out these heroes will depossess them. And then on top of that, each of these characters prevents sorceresses from becoming possessed at one of the 3 locations: Sid for Balam Garden, Squall for the Orphanage, and Laguna for Estar. We then have Zell. Zell just prevents allies from being played to or moved to specific locations unless they're strong enough. You have Keistis, which is just kind of a generic hero. She becomes more powerful the more allies Ultimecia discards. So if you have a player who uses that apocalypse trick once or twice and throws away a whole bunch of allies, which Ultimecia players tend to do, you might end up with a power 5 or 6 Quistis on the board. Selfie is probably the worst hero in the deck. When you play Selfie, you can play her to a locked location. That location becomes unlocked, and then it can never become locked unless you get rid of Selfie. This is the hard stop. If Ultimecia is sitting on her win condition, this is the card you want to see come out. We have Irvine, and then I believe Angelo. These two cards prevent sorceresses from becoming possessed in different ways. And then you have Elone, or Aeon. You know, this game doesn't have voice acting, so I have no idea how to pronounce this. This enables discarded heroes to come back into the realm after Ultimecia deals with them. Finally, we have a couple of just generic +1 strength cards in Aura. We have Triple Triad Combo. So when Ultimecia defeats a hero, she has to get rid of either an ally or an item in another location in her realm. And then we have these two cards, Eyes on Me. These do the same thing, but I just could not resist using different artwork for the two versions of the card. Mechanically, they're the same thing, just one has Laguna and Julia, and the other has Squall and Renoa. And the idea here is you either lock a location that has a hero, or you depossess any sorceress in an unlocked location that has a hero. Either one is pushing Ultimecia back from her win condition. And that is just about the Ultimecia deck. This deck has gone through pretty heavy revision. The first version of this deck was literally unplayable and got the player into a state where he could not continue. But after plugging up some holes, the deck does seem to work really well, and I actually like playing this one a lot. Sort of similar to Sin in that it's very easy to box yourself in because Ultimecia is adding and removing actions from her realm by adding or removing locks as you go. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Ultimecia is the 6th villain deck in this mod. Originally there were going to be 10 decks, but I've just recently started working on an 11th. Let me know what you think. The link to the mod for Tabletop Simulator is down in the doobly-doo. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.